Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to discuss Week 7, and I'm going to give my 2 cents on what I saw this past weekend. We are going to be going over my top 25, my losers and winners, and my takeaways. If you're new to this channel, consider giving a like and hitting that subscribe button and commenting your thoughts down below. Join this awesome community and help us reach 2,000 subscribers and beyond. So without further ado, let's get into my top 25. So my top 25 is normal in the sense that I have Georgia and Cincinnati at 1 and 2 respectively. Georgia, both of these teams are playing some of the best defense, and both do have high offensive potential as well. Alabama at 3rd, I have them there because, despite losing to A&M, who has shown improvement since their losses to Mississippi State and Arkansas, Alabama has a lot of offensive upside, and they do have a good enough defense to win national championships. Ohio State is in a similar boat as Alabama, though they did have a bye over Week 7. Their offense is possibly the best in the country, but their defense is yet to be seen against proven teams. Michigan and Oklahoma, I have, though they are undefeated, just on the outside looking in. You might think that's drastic, especially with Oklahoma's performance under Caleb Williams, but Caleb Williams has faced some of the worst defenses in the Big 12 in TCU and Texas. TCU and Texas are surrounded by the likes of Duke, Charlotte, and North Texas when it comes to total yards allowed per game. They're surrounded by MAC schools, by Conference USA schools, by lower-end Group of 5 schools. If you hear the bell ringing in the background, that is my cat. He says hello. But anyway, back onto football. Michigan and Oklahoma have areas they need to prove themselves in. Michigan needs to prove that they can have, same with Oklahoma actually, complete, competent football against top 10 teams. Penn State proved that they actually could hold their own against who I think still is a top 10 team in Iowa. They just couldn't get it done in the end because Clifford got injured. I rose Penn State a few spots, even though they did have a bye, because I heard news that Clifford is likely to be back before the season is over, and I hear it's likely that he will be back possibly for even the Illinois game. So that could be something. If he's back to the Illinois game, he'll only have missed half a game, and this team still could potentially cause some trouble in the Big Ten East. Ole Miss and Coastal Carolina both have fantastic offenses. Ole Miss, of course, has had the harder strength of schedule than Coastal. I am just very high on Coastal, and their matchup with App State will actually determine a lot, I believe. If they crush App State, then I think they, for now, earn the ranking that I give them. If they barely beat them, they'll probably drop a few spots. Ole Miss, they showed some signs of defense against Tennessee, who has one of the better offenses, and Matt Corral continues to ball out. Iowa really disappointed me against Purdue. And Michigan State at number 11 also disappointed me against Indiana. But Michigan State won, Iowa lost. The reason I don't have Iowa ahead of Michigan State is because Iowa, like Oklahoma facing against TCU, had a lot of starting defenders out. Riley Moss and another star secondary player were out. I think he is the guy, other than Riley Moss, is another one of the highest graded cornerbacks in the Big Ten. So, yeah, you can't blame Iowa for losing, in a certain sense, to a Purdue team who is known to run like a fast-paced, just really highly rated offense with a good wide receiver in David Bell, good QB in Aidan O'Connell. But at the same time, their defense is amazing. And without their two corners, if this is what their defense looks like, just take one of them out of the game and they're a very beatable team. And their offense looked very beat up. Nonetheless, I still have faith that for now, they are still in the driver's seat for the Big Ten West. Michigan State, I think, will finish around 9-3 in the year. They're showing a lot of inconsistencies right now, but they're undefeated. They have a great running back and a great quarterback, and their defense showed some signs of life against Indiana, albeit. And Kentucky, just got blown out by Georgia. What else do we expect? Will Levis, they have to do more with passing. They have to do more on offense. And you can't really expect them to do much more on defense because it's Georgia. They're just going to wear you down. Doesn't matter if it's Stenson Bennett, James Cook, Zamir White, JT Daniels. Doesn't matter if they have George Pickens at wide receiver or not. It doesn't matter. They have 5 stars and you have 3 stars, for Pete's sakes. Oklahoma State, I'm a little bit skeptical on them, but they're 6-0. They came back against Texas, who is far from back, just to further pinch at Texas there, something I like to do. I'm a little skeptical about Oklahoma State, but they have a nice defense. Spencer Sanders is doing enough to get them wins. I'm curious to see where they go from here on out. Similar as with Texas A&M. They were up very early, like 21-0 on Missouri. They finished up 35-14 was the final score. A&M could win out and they could finish second, or if Alabama loses another game and A&M wins out, A&M could possibly find themselves in first place in the SEC West, though I do doubt it. North Carolina State, I still think, is the best team in the ACC. Sure, the AP poll is Wake Forest ranked ahead because, of course, they're undefeated. But NC State lost to a Mississippi State team who is proof positive to have a habit, and Mike Leach has this habit too, of upsetting good teams. Not elite like Alabama, but good. Devin Leary looked good against Boston College, just have to give that one to him. Oregon had a very disappointing performance against Cal. Can't say much more. Wake Forest, I believe, they had a bye because their last win was against Syracuse. But I still think that Wake Forest, despite all this, deserves to be raised a few spots. They're 6-0. Dave Clawson is playing and coaching solid football. It seems to be all up from here for Wake Forest. Baylor, I thought BYU would beat them. It was anything but. Baylor dominated that game. Good QB play, good play everywhere for Baylor. Congratulations, you're going bowling this year and look a lot better in year 2 under Dave Aranda. Pitt is it. Kenny Pickett looks really good. They dominated Virginia Tech in their own stadium. And for that, I think they deserve to be ahead of Notre Dame, who struggled at Virginia Tech. Notre Dame had a bye, so we're not even going to talk about them. And I still think they're overrated. Buchner looked bad. Cone had to save the day, but despite being benched, it was chaotic. And Virginia Tech's not a good football team either, by the way. Auburn at 20th, they beat Arkansas. I thought Arkansas would win that game. Bo Nix had a really good game. He seems to be far better managed and developed under Harsin than Malzahn. And I give Auburn fans credit. Who said that? I give them credit. SMU had a bye. Utah beat Arizona State. And I still think Arizona State is a top 25 team. And I think they will get 8, 9, maybe 10 regular season wins, though I'm kind of doubtful on the latter. And UTSA being 7-0. What else? Purdue is near my top 25. Minnesota might actually be near my top 25, even though they lost to Bowling Green. I know. Arkansas could slip back in, depending on how things roll. Same thing with I mean, if Tennessee somehow manages to win some stuff, they have some of my respects. And along with that, you also do have, let me think of what other teams are close. UCLA. Out of all the teams I just mentioned, UCLA is probably the closest to re-entering my top 25. So that's my top 25. And now we are going to move on to my biggest takeaways. So some of which are, this year's teams are unusually volatile. The top 10 of this year is far worse than the top 10 of last year or the year before that. Example, 2019 Ohio State might blow out every team this year besides Georgia and maybe Alabama, Cincinnati, or this year's Ohio State. I still think they would beat all three of those teams, though. This year's teams, they're all a lot closer together. The super seniors for the smaller schools really help. And also the fact that these bigger schools are, with the NIL and all this stuff, and just, the kids wanting to make money, you're getting kids to these colleges, and then the second they can go to the NFL, they go to the NFL, so you're retaining less as well. And I think that's helping the smaller schools, but at the same time, the NIL and the transfer portal are going to end up helping the bigger schools as well. But these teams are very, very volatile. And we saw that with Iowa. I mean, Iowa came back and really bludgeoned Penn State. And then Purdue, waltzes in, dances around the stadium, and casually beats Iowa by 17 points. It's crazy. And it's the same thing with, Arizona State. They were up 21-7 against Utah, and Utah scores 28 unanswered points, wins 35-21. Cincinnati might be the best team in Ohio. Now, Ohio State fans, especially ones who are subscribed to me, I put a question mark here because I don't know. I have them ranked ahead of Ohio State, and part of that's the fact that they're undefeated. But at the same time, and I know Notre Dame is overrated, granted I still think they are a top 25 team or around there, Ohio State's one loss is to an Oregon team who is not playoff ready by any means. I mean, Anthony Brown is just not a great QB, and they can't. I think with him under center, they are bound to lose one or two more games at Utah and at UCLA, at least being one of them. At UCLA's Oregon's next game. But Ohio State, they've beaten Minnesota, which might be a good win. We'll see. Tulsa is not a good win. Akron is like beating a MAC school, or not even that. They're worse than they are like the worst MAC school. Maryland and Rutgers, those are the more impressive wins. And Cincinnati's more impressive wins, I would say, are Notre Dame and UCF, probably. The Indiana win, in retrospect, was a little bit uglier. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, Desmond Ridder is playing really well. The defense for Cincy is playing really well. I know Ohio State has the better offense than Cincy, I would say. But for the moment, I think that Cincy has the better defense. And this isn't even to shame Ohio State. Ohio State's a really good football team, and I think they make the playoff based on the season's current trajectory. This is simply saying that Cincinnati is also a playoff team. I think there might be two playoff teams from the state of Ohio. I would love for one of the spots to be filled with Michigan, but with current trajectory, Ohio, football fans from Ohio might have to choose between these two teams. And I don't know which one's better. I think you have a case for either of them to be better than the other one. Just shows you that Group of 5 schools are getting stronger, at least this year. The Pac-12 cannot stay stable for 1 week. Justin Wilcox comes in to Autzen Stadium and nearly brings... I mean, how much evidence do you need that Oregon, now without CJ Verdell and a bunch of other players, the SEC bully ball thing with a good enough quarterback to be annoying will not work. And it is very annoying. I get that you want to impose your will. And I get that you can do it in the Pac-12 for a good amount because you have so much talent and reputation. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You lost to Stanford. Oh, who, by the way, just lost to Washington State, who just fired their head coach for non-football reasons, but still, it's comedy gold. Like, beating Stanford means absolutely nothing. They haven't meant anything since 2017, if not 2016. That loss just... The Pac-12's a mess. And the Arizona State loss proves it too, because that means Utah is first in the South after losing to Brady Hoke and BYU. So it's just very interesting. UCLA barely beating Washington. I know Oregon State lost to Washington State. I don't know what's up with them at the moment. And Cal is now 1-5. So the Pac-12 is just very, very unstable. And Colorado got its second win of the year against winless Arizona as well. Know that as well. And I was right about Coach O. He is indeed gone. And 4-3 at the moment. They're probably going to lose to Alabama. I think they're going to lose to Ole Miss. I don't see no Citrus Bowl, no New Year's Six Bowl. It'll be a weird ending because, he's going, he's out, but some fans are going to miss him. Some fans will really want him gone, I think, after the conclusion of this season. Don't get it wrong. LSU's not a good football team. Just Florida was way overrated. And I am part of the guilty party who, thought that Florida was actually a good football team. But he's gone. Mel Tucker, James Franklin, Luke Fickell, John Gruden, for some reason, is on the betting odds to actually become LSU's head coach. That's not happening. But the others were legitimate names being mentioned. And finally, the Big Ten West is wide open for 4 teams. Minnesota, Purdue, Iowa, and yes, Wisconsin. If Wisconsin wins out because all the other teams have one conference loss, Wisconsin would go to Indy. If I could describe that in one word, that'd be amazing. It'd also be very ironic since Wisconsin has one of the worst defenses in, a conference, even a division. And the West is pretty backward, but even the West has a wide range of offensive talent. Graham Mertz has to be one of the worst, if not by development in a certain sense or application of talent, the worst quarterback in the West, potentially. And his team has a possible path to Indy. And finally, my losers and my winners. Nick Rolovich was fired, and a lot of his staff was fired too for not taking the COVID-19 vaccine. From a football perspective, the university had every right to fire him. He signed a contract knowing the rules and didn't follow them. But at the same time, his religious exemption, I don't know the whole story behind that. Supposedly it hadn't come through by Sunday. Maybe it came through and was rejected, or maybe it wasn't processed yet and they just fired him. Haven't really read up on the whole thing yet, just got the notification. It's been a busy day. But it's interesting. And from a football perspective, I disagree with the decision because I think, you're going to have to, it's resetting the program back, in my opinion. However, he knew the rules, he made the choice, and he can't complain, or the others who refuse to got it can't complain when it's mandated in the state. I'm going to keep it as plain and simple as possible. Nebraska in Indiana. Nebraska and Indiana, I don't think either of these teams will be going bowling. Let's just put it that way. Spencer Petras is a trash QB. 4 picks against Purdue. I think even Tanner Morgan had a better game than Spencer Petras against Purdue. And he had to play at Purdue. So that just tells you everything you need to know. And Tanner Morgan, we'll get to the winners in a few. He actually looked a lot better against Nebraska than previously in the season. Coach O is also a loser this week. I mean, you just won a national title 2 years ago. And I've been saying to friends and even on this podcast channel, whatever you want to call it, for a while, that I thought he would be fired or that he wasn't the proper guy to move forward, thought he was overrated. And the 2019 season obviously was a season where the stars aligned, but he was still a part of it. And he still assisted in the development of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, which I hate saying, but it's true, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But nonetheless, it has to be painful. And I think he will, because there are places that accept having 7 to 8 wins as the norm. There will be places where he will get a job, I think. And finally, before the video concludes, we move on to our winners. Purdue and Minnesota. Purdue, again, they came in. Aidan O'Connell went 30 of 40, 2 touchdowns, I think around 300 yards of offense. And I think, 375 passing yards, I think? Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. It's just the number that came to my head. Played amazing football. David Bell had over 200 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. They destroyed, dominated, whatever you want to call it. They did that to Iowa. Minnesota took a bowling ball, and flung it around and then hit Scott Frost with it. That job, I think, kills any chances of Scott Frost returning next year. And maybe there is some wildly outlandish reason that he does. Maybe he somehow wins out and beats Ohio State and Iowa. Don't think that's happening. If you truly were improving, and you are improving, but if you were to truly bear fruit from Scott Frost's improvement, you would have went into TCF Bank Stadium and you would have beaten them by 21 points at the minimum. That's what you would have done. And you couldn't. Martinez did not have a great game. He was held to negative rushing yards. And some people say, oh, he makes constant mistakes. It's dude, he is their offense. Everyone makes mistakes, but when one kid is the offense, one kid, you can't rely on one kid to be your offense, and that's what Nebraska's trying to do. Tanner Morgan completed over 80% of his passes, threw for 2 touchdowns and 2 picks, though the 2 picks came after his 2 touchdowns. He was playing really good before those 2 picks, and they ran all over Nebraska. The fact that Nebraska was within 3 of Michigan and Michigan State, and I'm from the state of Michigan and am a Michigan fan, is kind of embarrassing in a certain sense. Utah and UCLA both came out with close wins. I think both trailed or were tied with their opponents at some point. I know Utah was, not so sure about UCLA, but what wins? I mean, both of these teams are the leaders, I would say, along with Arizona State in the South, and both got wins, necessary wins in my opinion. I thought UCLA preseason would lose to Washington, and I actually called Utah to upset Arizona State. And the halftime score scared me, but when I saw that Utah scored 28 unanswered, I'm like, let's go. Go Kyle Whittingham. So those are 2 teams that I found as winners. Sean Tucker, he just keeps performing so well at Syracuse. It's unbelievable. He rushed for over 100 yards against Clemson, who has a stout defense. He even tracks his performances on Twitter. What a guy. And finally, Mike Gundy. 6-0, solid defense. You went into Texas and you beat them. You had 12 fourth quarter points, come back and beat the Horns. It's impressive. I mean, I was the guy who this summer was thinking, like, just looking at Mike Gundy's his record from half a decade ago to now, I'm like, I'm saying in my head, his ceiling is truly 10 wins, like 9-10 wins. Probably won't get any more than 8-9 this year. And I was wrong. He probably will finish. This will probably be one of his better years. He'll probably finish, I'd say, at the moment, 10-3. Why not? Maybe 11-2. We shall see. But it looks to be good for Mike Gundy and the Cowboys. That's all I have to say for this video. If you liked it, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.